With all the pieces in place, now let's see how we can get data from our database. So let's go to the API folder, open the users folder, and then go to this route file. Now we're going to change this get function. So instead of returning hard-coded data, we're going to return data from our database. First, on the top, we import Prisma from Prisma/client. So this is the client file that we just created. Take a look. In this file, we have exported a constant called Prisma. So we import Prisma in curly braces. Now in this function, we call Prisma.user.findMany to get all users from our database. Now we can optionally provide an object and filter our users. For example, here we can set where to an object. In this object, we can set email or any of the properties to some value to filter users. Now we can also provide multiple filters. We can combine them using logical AND or logical OR. It gets too complicated. For that, you have to look at the documentation, okay? So let's get all the users. Now this returns a promise, so we await it to get our users. Next, we make this function async. And finally, we return all these users in the response. Okay, now back in the browser, let's go to API/users. All right, here's what we have, beautiful. Now let's see how we can fetch a single user. For that, we have to go to our other route file, the one in the ID folder. All right, here's another get function. So once again, on the top, we import Prisma. Then in this function, first we call Prisma.user.findUnique. Now, when calling this, we provide an object. In this object, we set a condition. We set where to an object. And here we set ID to params.id. That is the parameter that we pass here, okay? So earlier we added params. We used destructuring. I know the syntax is a little bit confusing, but trust me, over time, everything becomes second nature. So we call findUnique. Again, this returns a promise. So we await it to get a user object. Now let's make this function async. Now if this user is not found, we'll get null. So we have to change this condition and say, if user is falsy, then we return this error. Otherwise, we return the user object in the response. Now, back in the browser, let's go to users/1. Technically, we shouldn't say this. I don't know what I did wrong. Let me save the changes and refresh. All right. So our application broke. If you look in the terminal, you will see an error saying argument ID invalid value provided. Expected int provided string. Let's see what's going on here. So back to our code. Here in the get function, look, if you hover over this ID property, you can see the type is number. This is based on our user model. However, what we provided, which was params.id, was a string, because the values that we have in URLs, even though this is a number, is treated as a string. So earlier I made a mistake. I set the type of the ID property in the params object to a number, but this has to be a string because this is the actual value we get at runtime. Now, over here, we have to parse this string into a number like this, okay? Now, let's hit this endpoint one more time. There you go. So this is the first user, beautiful. If we go to users/2, we get user not found. Perfect.